Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a new Gold Lantana. This is new Gold Lantana, an almost all summer flowering perennial plant. In the colder areas of the country where this is perennial, it dies to the ground and comes back every spring and flowers all summer. And in other parts of the country where it's very warm during the winter, it actually is a little evergreen shrub. New Gold can reach 2 to 3 feet in height and maybe 3 to 4 feet in width over the course of a single summer, and can probably be kept 2 feet in height and 3 feet in width. It can be kept very small. It has a more spreading, lower growing habit as opposed to Miss Huff and some of the more upright lantanas. New Gold is best in zones 7 to 11. In zones 7, 8, and 9, this is a herbaceous perennial. Herbaceous perennial means it dies to the ground. The roots are hardy through the winter and it comes back up the following year. Actually, in zones 10 and 11, these are actually little evergreen shrubs. In terms of rate of growth of new Gold Lantana or any lantana, they go from dormancy, just hardy roots in the wintertime, to full size in a single season. So they're quite vigorous growers, and they need to continue growing because the new growth is what produces all the flowers. Lantana need at least half of the midday sun and really would prefer full sun. They perform much better when they're getting a lot of the midday sun. In terms of usage of new Gold Lantana, this thing can be used pretty much anywhere. It's great on a foundation planting in front of your other evergreen shrubs. It's great in mass plantings. It's great at the front of a perennial border because it's going to stay lower than most of your other perennials. It's great mass planted with other lantana that get taller than it. So in front of other lantana, it's quite showy. Yellow shows up fantastic against other flowers. Flowering for new Gold Lantana in the cooler areas like zone 7 or 8, it's going to come back from the ground in late April through mid-May, and by late May it'll be in flower, and it'll flower most all of the summer. I'm actually filming this almost October, and it's still flowering here in the middle of North Carolina in zone 7B. In zones 9, 10, and 11, it would start much earlier than that with much shorter winters in those areas. And it has these very vibrant yellow flowers all summer long. Looks great with other darker foliage plants behind it or any darker flowers behind it. It really makes this yellow stand out from a long distance. In terms of planting new Gold Lantana or any lantana, our main concern is that they're not staying abnormally wet in the winter time. In zone 7, 8, and 9, this thing dies to the ground and the roots are sitting under there. They can't use any of the water that they're sitting in, and so if it's a very wet space, they're likely not going to come back. They're going to rot in the wintertime. So we want to elevate these some when we plant them, and if you have any clay soil, you want to mix something chunky in with it. This pine bark soil conditioner is the best thing. Most garden stores have it. Mix that 50-50 with the clay and elevate this plant some. Dig the hole as if you're going to plant the entire depth of the root ball into the ground, and then mix some of that 50-50 mix, that bark and clay mix, put it back in the bottom of the hole, maybe 2 inches of it. And then so when you set this down into the hole, it actually is going to be sitting up about this much, maybe 2 inches. Pull your soil mixture up to the edge of that and then lightly mulch. We don't want to bury any part of this plant in mulch. That will also contribute to holding too much water in place during the wintertime. If you have sandier soils, you want to do the opposite and try to hold a little bit of water in place between rains. And we'll use compost, cow manure, or peat moss 50-50 with the sand. This new Gold Lantana happens to be in a 3-gallon pot, and it's not at all root bound. Root bound means the roots are matted all the way around the inside of the plant. They've just reached the side of the pot and started wrapping in a circle. Most of the time you're going to buy this plant in a little 1-gallon pot, and it's going to be almost this big. When you pull it out, you're going to want to take the roots and really pull at them quite a bit to try to get them to stop wrapping around one another. If it's really, really bad, you could actually take a knife and cut maybe a 1/2 inch to the root ball from the top to the bottom, maybe in 3 spots, and that'll get the roots going outward. In terms of watering lantana, they're really one of the most drought tolerant plants you're ever going to own. Almost no drought would kill these. But the problem with letting them get too dry is that the new growth stops when they get dry, and all the flowers happen to be on the newest growth on this plant. So we're going to want to try to keep it growing during the summer. And so if it gets dry, you're going to want to, and it gets stressed, you'll start to see some yellow leaves in the bottom of it. This plant will wilt a little when it's really dry. You'll want to drag a water hose over to it, water it very well, saturate the area until it doesn't really hold any more water, and then don't water it for a while. I call it drown and forget. It's really a good way to water. We want them to dry out between rains a little bit, and we want to dry out between watering a little bit, so that they'll actually chase after water some, that they'll root out some. A lot of people water a little bit every day or a little bit every other day, and they keep that space right around the plant constantly moist, and the plant really has no reason to root out. I've been on landscape jobs where I've stuck a shovel in the ground and popped a plant out of the ground 2 or 3 years after it's been planted, and it really never put on any roots. The top part of the plant was fine, but they had been using an irrigation system to water that space. If they had ever stopped using the irrigation system, almost certainly those plants would have just died very quickly, because now they were 3 foot tall in the same small little root ball they had come in. In terms of fertilizing New Gold, or any lantana for that matter, again, the flowers are on the newest growth, so we want to keep it growing. So spring fertilizing with something like Flower Tone would be a great organic solution. You could use any of the Miracle Grow products, would be fine. They're good for flowering. They're a little short, quick release, and you have to do them more frequently. So I prefer to use something that's a slow release, like the Osmocote product, which is a slow release that'll last most all of the summer. And you could do that depending on the slow release fertilizer you're using. If it's like a 2 or 3 month slow release, you could use it in mid-spring as they're starting to emerge from dormancy, and then again in mid-summer, maybe around the 4th of July, and that would keep this thing flowering all summer long. You could prune these anytime during the growing season that you needed to. If it got wider than you wanted, which almost certainly New Gold will, it grows very wide, you can just, anytime you want to, take a pair of shears and get this thing back to the height and width that you need it. That's not a problem. The only real special consideration you need to know on these is winter pruning. When these go dormant, when they get hit by the first hard freeze, most of the top of this plant is going to die back. Don't take any of that off until we've gone past the coldest part of the winter. That seems to offer some protection to the roots of these plants. Anytime I cut my perennials back in November, December, which is very, very tempting, that's when I've had problems with them coming back. I always leave whatever foliage, if it's hosta, I don't care what it is, don't clean them up until late February or early March as the ground temperature is starting to warm back up again. Also, a lot of your herbaceous perennials like this, plants that die to the ground in the winter and come back in the spring, they have hollow stems, and the rainwater in the wintertime can get down those hollow stems if you've cut them off, and then through the process of freezing and that water expanding, actually crack the base of your plants and permanently damage them or kill them. Insect or disease problems on lantana, they pretty much get every insect that comes along. It seems like they'll get aphids, they'll get white flies very bad. If they're tucked up in a corner and they're not getting any air movement, almost certainly you'll have white flies at some point during the summer. But there are organic and chemical controls for them if it gets too bad. I would say if it's really, really bad, it might be that you need to change the plant to a different space where maybe it gets a little more breeze on it occasionally. It might be tucked up too much into a corner. Deer tend to stay away from them. I would put them in the very deer resistant category. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the low maintenance, all summer flowering New Gold lantana. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also comment below with any questions you have about perennials or other lantana varieties. Thank you.